Trigger warning. This podcast is about grief. Whether you are newly bereaved or whether you have been stuck in grief for years, I do hope this podcast brings you some comfort. Grief is such a universal experience, but we all do it differently. This podcast is not about fixing you or forcing the healing process, because there is no cure for grief. It can only be absorbed, experienced, loved and cared for. So whether you are doing it privately behind closed doors, or like me, you are kicking and screaming your way through, let's support each other. This is a safe space where we can come together and share experiences. My hope is that this podcast shines a light on your path and gives you the strength to navigate your way through the grieving process. My name is Louise Bates, and I'm so pleased we connected. I'm looking forward to interviewing people who have also walked this path to find out what worked for them, in the hope that it helps you too. I'm sending you so much love and support, and I look forward to sharing this crazy journey with you. Hello and welcome to my podcast, A Gift for Grief. And today I am delighted to be speaking to my first male guest, Ashley Griffiths. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Now, do I call you Ashley or Ash?
I've been called many things, so either or.
Okay, well, on your email, you're Ash. I'll call you Ash.
Okay.
Ash is a confidence coach who helps his clients with self-promotion, be that videos for their marketing, preparing for public speaking engagements, or appearing live. He also has a podcast called An Espresso Shot of Confidence, and he is on a mission to empower more people to believe in themselves. When Ash is not working, he's travelling or in a coffee shop with a good book, a black coffee and a slice of carrot cake.
Absolutely.
I like that, but it'd have to be chocolate cake for me.
Okay. More carrot cake for me then. That's all good.
So you like to travel. Could you tell us some of the places that you've been to?
Wow, yeah. I've been to 45 countries so far. A lot of Asia, a lot of Europe. Morocco is my first dose of Africa. Spent a lot of time in Asia. Lived in Thailand, China, Japan.
Wow.
Looking at another trip soon. Hopefully Sri Lanka is top of my list, but just waiting to see.
Have you got a favourite place?
That's an impossible question to answer. It changes every day.
Yeah.
I think Thailand has a special place in my heart.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So perhaps we could start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a confidence coach. So I help people with self-promotion, with being able to really tap into who they are, their gifts, the things they can do. Because I think there's always this temptation to focus on all the things you can't do. And as a result of that, people don't do things that they're more than capable of, and they don't take advantage of their gifts.
Yeah.
So I really help with that. One of the main things is getting people on videos, because that seems to freak a lot of people out about going on social media and, oh my God, look, it's me. I hate how I look. I hate how I sound.
Yeah.
But when we actually reflect on what the audience, how people are reacting to them, it changes the whole narrative, because people actually say, oh, well, people actually want to hear what I've got to say. Yeah. Because you've really got something to share. So I love being able to facilitate that transformation.
Yeah. And I can resonate with that, because I remember years ago putting my photograph on my website for the first time, because I just never had my photograph on, because I just didn't want people to see me, because I, had this thing that didn't look right, or it might put people off coming to see me. But now with social media, we've sort of got used to putting ourselves out there a little bit more, haven't we?
Massively. It's very common, be it a picture, be it a video, putting yourself front and centre of your business really can open. It does take a lot of vulnerability initially to do that, especially if you've got any of those sort of judgments on yourself, which we all do, because when we see ourselves on a picture versus when we see ourselves in a mirror, it looks very different. So there's all sorts of psychology going on there. So it takes a little bit of getting used to. But ultimately, I always say to people, if you've got a gift, some knowledge to share with people, and you know that you can help people, you have a responsibility to get that out there.
Absolutely.
So put that picture out there. You know, it maybe sounds a little bit harsh, but kind of get over yourself and get it out there, because people need to see you.
Great advice. So with you being a confidence coach, I imagine you've trained in a variety of different mindset tools.
Yeah.
So you're probably the best person to ask this question. But what is it about men that prevents them from talking about their feelings and emotions?
Men having emotions and feelings, heaven forbid. I think a big part of that, I believe there's still a lot of stigma and about what it is to be a man. And there's this whole misconception of what masculine energy is and feminine energy is. And a lot of people just, I think it's a hangover from when we were in the caves, hunter-gatherers, you know, or maybe not even that. I think it's more of a recent thing. Yeah. This whole concept of the man needs to be strong, has to have it all together. You know, we've got to be the strong person of the family. People rely on us. And there was this narrative that showing emotion was seen as a weakness, whereas I totally believe it's a strength.
Absolutely.
Because just look at the history of men, look at the suicide rates of men in the world right now. This all comes from not letting emotions out. People keep it in. It eats them alive, literally in some cases when it manifests into cancers. There's just still the stigma about what will people think. Will people think that I am some weak, not particularly useful man if I share? Yeah. And I believe wholeheartedly that more of us need to be sharing.
Absolutely. And, you know, phrases like big boys don't cry doesn't help the cause really, does it?
Well, there's a lot of common expressions around that, you know, like there's stop being a girl, for example. That, again, these phrases that have become quite part of our everyday life diminishes the male. You know, well, you're not a proper man if you like that. Yeah. But I'd say you're more of a man.
Absolutely.
If you've got the courage to be vulnerable, to share, to put stuff out there. Yeah. I think you're much more of one. And I feel that it has a much more positive impact on the people around you when you do that.
Yeah. But it's sort of generations of conditioning, isn't it? But having you on the podcast today, and other men will hear this, these conversations need to be heard, don't they?
On all levels, they absolutely need to be heard. I mean, when you say it's generational, you know, I don't think I ever saw... The only emotion I think I ever saw from, like, say, my granddad was maybe humour and anger from that generation, and very rarely saw emotions from my father until, you know, much later on. Yeah. Now I do, but back then it was just something that wasn't encouraged or deemed acceptable. Yeah.
We are getting better at talking about mental health, but we've still got a long way to go, especially in this country.
Huge,
I think, haven't we?
Huge. You know, I think you've got charities like Movember, Mind, that are doing a huge amount, but the only way to remove the stigma is by more males speaking up.
Definitely.
And it's, again, like I said earlier on, about having that responsibility to share. I've got quite a large following on social media, and I thought, well, let's get the word out. Yeah. And it did take a little bit of, because I think that there is this notion that if I say that, like, for example, I've got some sort of mental health challenge, will that have an impact on my business? Will that have an impact on my life? But I thought, no, this is bigger than my ego. Yeah. So I started sharing, and I know many other males have done that. And as a result of that, other males are starting to share. So again, it all comes down to that responsibility. I feel like for me, on a mental health area, I'm comfortable sharing. So I feel it's a responsibility to, because I know so many men out there still don't.
Yeah, it's going to help so many people, isn't it?
If it helps just one, then we've
Absolutely.
potentially saved a life, literally.
Yes, yes. Now, Ash, a few years ago, your sister Abby died.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about Abby and what life was like before she died?
Okay. So Abby was my baby sister. She's 8 years younger than me. And Abby had a challenging life. And as a result of that, our family did as well. So Abby and me were estranged, I suppose is the best way to put it. I'm currently writing a book about this, actually. And for me, Abby died twice.
Okay.
For me. The literal death and the separation.
Yeah.
But yes, so just to kind of come back, Abby spent the last few 10, 12 years of her life institutionalized.
Okay.
She was sectioned in 2007, and she lived in various state and eventually in a private facility, which was good, to be honest with you, because it made her safe. She had when she was out living with the family and all of that, there was a lot of trouble, a lot of problems, a lot of challenges. People, got hurt, and she was not safe.
Yeah.
So eventually she was institutionalized, which obviously put a big strain. Before she went in and afterwards, put a strain on the family.
Yeah, people don't realise the impact mental health has on the people around the people suffering. And mental health exists on such a vast spectrum, ranging from mild challenges to more severe disorders. Yeah. And individuals like Abby with mental health issues can teach us the importance of recognising and understanding this diversity and the impact that it has on the family and friends as well.
Massively.
Yeah.
Massively.
And their stories remind us that mental health can affect all of us. And it's not something easily categorised or simplified. It's a complex tapestry of emotions, thoughts and experiences unique to each individual. So, I can hear it in you. There's a lot of pain still, the way Abby was and how it's affected your family. How do you deal with this?
My initial reaction, it kind of come back to how do men share that this was to run away. Okay. I literally moved to a different country.
Yeah.
I quit my job and my life here because I just couldn't handle it anymore. It was tough because I know I have a lot more awareness now around this. Back then I didn't. I was effectively a man-child. So it was like, what about me? Because I think when you're, as a parent, I believe, I'm not a parent, but I'm just going to try and empathize with that. I think when you have a child that offers that much challenge, as Abby did, and you're trying to protect that child as best as you can, there's no instruction manual here. There's no guide on how to look after people like Abby that had all these challenges, that were violent, aggressive, got in trouble with the police, lied, sent a couple of us to spend some time at Her Majesty's pleasure through her behaviour. There's no instruction guide here.
No.
So I know my mum and dad were doing what they could with what they had.
Yeah.
But I think, again, when you're there and you're seeing this, because I wasn't living at the house, I was watching it from kind of afar almost. I'm like, this ain't right.
Yeah.
This isn't right. But to be able to have I wasn't mentally mature enough at that time to have a kind of a conversation about how can we handle this, because it was so emotional.
Yeah.
It was so personal for everybody. So my solution eventually it was to run away.
Yeah, and that worked for you, and that's what you needed to do in that moment. So Abby died suddenly, didn't she? So
Very.
it wasn't related to her mental health issues?
No.
So
Well,
could you just share the events that led up to her death and how your family learned about the cause of her death?
Yeah. Abby had just moved into a new facility. They were slowly easing her back into society.
Yeah.
So she was at a new place, and I'd been out that night with some friends, and had come back. So my mum had literally, like they always did, they'd spoken, I think around 7:00. Abby said she wasn't feeling great, but she just had a cold or something, and she was going to go and watch her favourite TV show. The next thing we know, at 12:00, we get a phone. My mum gets a phone call saying Abby's dead. And I just, or no, I think she'd got a phone call saying Abby had been taken to hospital, and then she got a phone call like an hour later saying Abby was dead. And yeah, I had to phone Zara, my sister, which was not, I don't have to make that phone call again.
Nobody wants to make that phone call, do they? No.
And then so mum and dad got a friend, because I think they'd both been drinking, or my dad had been, so a friend came and drove them to the hospital, and I'm just at home, like, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, the death of a sibling is rarely talked about. And my daughter and I were having a conversation on this subject. People don't like talking about grief generally, but when we lose a brother or sister, society doesn't really acknowledge the loss so much, does it? And this can complicate the grieving process too. And people need to have their grief validated and heard, but for some reason, the loss of a sibling is a type of hidden grief. But you've got all this other stuff, this backstory as well, that adds to your experience.
Yeah.
And then the shock of losing her, there's no warning. You don't see that coming.
No.
So you've got your life to live. But, did your training as a coach give you any tools that you use on yourself to help you process your experience?
Not the time, because I think this is sort of probably the catalyst that drew me more into coaching. Okay. And in particular working with the type of people that reach out for me. I mean, I always say this, grief is such a unique experience. Yeah. People can say, oh, I know how you feel. No, they don't.
No.
They don't. When it comes to grief, nobody has a clue, because everybody reacts so differently. I couldn't, it's like me saying, oh, I know how my mum feels. I ain't got a clue. I'm not a mother. How could I possibly know what it's like for her to lose a child? Impossible. So for me, it was just, it's a very weird place. I just felt like everything kind of came to a standstill almost.
Yeah.
But the kind of ironic, the one thing I noticed was a lot of my kind of like mental health symptoms just disappeared because the focus was elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of walking around. I remember, because I'm a bit of a people watcher, but I remember just sitting in the pub this one day, just like everybody just doing their own thing, and I'm just kind of sat there in this armchair, like just feeling like a different world.
Yeah.
A different world. Because I think it is, I think certainly as a sibling, yes, the focus is put on certainly the parents when it comes to grief. And I know, you know, I felt bad for my parents because they'd fought so hard for Abby.
Yeah.
And they were starting to get somewhere, and they'd finally got some sort of diagnosis they could do something with that was going to have an impact on her life. And then no,
Yeah.
it's gone. And for me, after the first couple of days, you know, we had a lot of people at the house. I just wanted everybody to disappear.
Yeah.
I was like, and so if people were going to keep coming around, I just disappeared. So you know, being around people helps, but it has to be on your terms.
Absolutely. So did the coaching come after Abby's death?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you go into the coaching because of your experience, you say?
No, I think part of it was because I'd been teaching. So it just felt like a logical next step.
Yeah.
To start coaching people. And yeah, it was just a very logical next step for me. I think everything with my life has always kind of just one step has led to the next one.
There's no plan. You just go with...
I don't tend to do well with plans.
No. That's good. Do what works for you. So what helped you, Ash, on your grief journey? Did you have any counselling, any therapy or...
Yes. Yeah. I think for me, it was kind of perfect timing, really. I just arranged to start new sessions with a counsellor. So yeah, I remember we went in, we were just doing the first okay, what's the objectives, what are we doing? I said, well, and I just kind of blurted out with it, well, yeah, I'm not entirely sure what's what at the moment. Why was that? Well, my sister died. It was just almost like a throwaway comment.
Yeah.
So that helped a lot, because I think one of the biggest feelings that I had to deal with, mostly with this, was the guilt.
Okay.
And I think, again, that's probably driven the coaching and the way that I've supported a lot of people since.
Yes, yeah.
Because as I mentioned at the start of the session, I kind of cut off Abby in 2007. I just couldn't handle it.
No,
I couldn't handle the family dynamic. I found it very uncomfortable when we were together as a family unit. I just felt it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I distanced myself, and I'd kind of made a point that I was like, okay, maybe we need to start developing a relationship again. But I can't do it with the family unit. It has to be me and her.
Yeah.
And you always just assume, okay, I'll do it next week. Oh, we got all the time in the world. Until you don't.
Yeah.
So the counselling really helped with the guilt, because I think that was one of the huge, because she was my little sister, and I felt I'd let her down because I used to protect her.
Yeah.
And I've got that big protecting, nurturing role. It's a big part of my personality. So I thought, okay, well, and this wasn't a conscious thing, but I can see how it's played out now.
Yeah.
How, well, if I couldn't protect her, maybe I couldn't do right by other people.
Yeah. But you probably did the right thing for her as well, because you're not an expert in Abby's problems and mental health issues. And sometimes the people that are closest can't help those people. They need the experts. Mm-hmm. So you not being there was probably helpful in some way.
Sure.
Yeah. So what else helped you, Ash? Or any, books or films or podcasts or anything?
I think to answer again a question that you asked earlier on, I think I discovered Brené Brown.
Oh, I love that lady.
Yeah,
She's so inspirational, isn't she?
absolutely. And I quote her all the time, especially around the whole of Daring Greatly, because she speaks a lot about vulnerability.
Yes.
So being able to really enhance that, to embrace that vulnerability and to just speak. So she was a big inspiration. I found Gabor Mate
Yeah.
as well. His words are very powerful. He just has a very powerful way of reframe. He's just very skilled at reframing.
Yes. Yeah.
Very skilled at reframing. And just learning to be gentle with yourself.
Yeah.
Especially, again, I think, because this is not a unique thing. I think if you asked a lot of people regarding grief, especially those that, even if it was a sudden loss or even people on their deathbed, there's usually a lot of guilt about the things people didn't do
Yeah.
in their life. So reading things certainly by Brené Brown and Gabor Mate, and even stuff like the law of attraction, actually being mindful of what you're doing now,
Absolutely.
the time you have, was very powerful. And so yeah, that helped a lot.
Yeah, and I will put links to these people in the show notes so the listeners can check them out, because there's a lot on YouTube that you can just sit and listen to. Because I know when people are grieving, I found it very difficult to sit and read. I couldn't concentrate, so I would listen to a lot of stuff, and just listening to them talk is very healing, isn't it?
I love listening. Yeah, I think that's a very powerful thing. I think the one thing I would definitely say is some things that you would normally do might just not work.
Absolutely.
Because you won't be able to focus.
Yeah.
Some people like myself kind of dove in. I say, okay, I'll just work.
Yeah.
Nah,
That's just a distraction, isn't it?
That's just a distraction. And it didn't help because I couldn't focus. So I think as well, just being as well, I'd say in that moment, just being truthful with people.
Yeah.
Being gentle with yourself and saying, look, I can do this and I can't do that. And just that's it.
Yeah.
You don't have to describe it. You don't have to explain yourself. Just say, look, I just can't. That's it, enough.
Yeah. So did you find people were unsure how to be around you or not know what to say after Abby died? You know, did you have people cross the road to avoid you like some people do?
I didn't see that. I think people do get a bit awkward, I've noticed. People do get a bit awkward around death. They get a bit awkward. They don't know what to say, and people then get a bit conscious. Well, what if I say the wrong thing? And well, not saying anything is that necessarily going to be helpful.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have any problems. There were people around me that were there, and they listened, and that was
good.
That was good.
Yeah. But as a society, we're just not comfortable with talking about grief, are we?
No.
It's something, hopefully the podcast, that I'm on a mission to help society become more grief literate. Even finding the right words to express your condolences can seem very clumsy to some people, or it might be the right words for somebody else. Do you have the magic formula? Do you know what to say to people to pass on your condolences?
I wouldn't say that, but I think, again, just to reflect on what you were saying there, it kind of surprises me really, because grief is a part of everyday life.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about death. We are constantly moving through life and we lose things.
Yeah.
That matter to us. People, relationships, jobs.
Yeah.
We're constantly grieving, but there's this whole awkwardness around it. So my magic formula is just, I always say to people, just kind of read the room a little bit. And again, we're usually, I think part of the awkwardness is we're putting ourselves too much into that. We're worried too much about, well, what will they think about me? This ain't about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the other person. Just say, and it may be the stupid question, most stupid, it feels like it when you're doing it. It's like, how are you doing? But just actually being there and looking them, touching them on the shoulder and going, is there anything I can do? How are you doing?
Yeah.
Honestly, you feel like you know the answer. You know they're doing terrible, but just actually taking the time to say, but...
Yeah.
You
I
know.
think it's about acknowledging the loss, isn't it? If people just completely ignore it, I think that's worse
Totally.
than saying something clunky or clumsy.
Totally
Just say
that.
something.
think-
You're not going to make that person feel better, whatever you say.
Yeah.
But if you say nothing, then that's worse in some way, I think.
So I think for me, a friend of mine lost their child at the end of last year, very suddenly as well. Very suddenly. She was young as well,
Yeah.
which makes it... So yeah, I mean, I got to see this firsthand on the other side. It was like but I'd check in with him
Yeah.
because I know the sort of person he is, and I know that he would appreciate the fact that someone's taken the time to check in on him.
Yeah.
And yes, those are the first couple of times when I'm texting or getting on the phone, like, how are you doing? Well, you've just lost your daughter. You feel like terrible, but I can't make that decision for him. I can't say, right, this is how, well, maybe he'll feel this way if I send this. For me, it's like, it's a friend, just let him know I'm here.
Yeah.
Do you need anything? And again, I think when you're in that, certainly in the initial grief thing, you ain't got a clue what you need.
No.
So in the end, I'd say to people at that, if you've got a friend, if you know somebody that's just gone through a loss, especially a sudden one, just go knock on the door. Don't text them and say, what do you need? They ain't got a clue.
Yeah.
They ain't got a clue what they need.
Yeah.
They got no capacity to know what they need.
No. Do you know what I loved, appreciated after our son Matthew died? We'd open the front door and there would be like a bag of shopping on the doorstep. There was somebody left a tin, and it looked like a tin of sweets, and I just put it away. And months later I thought, I'll open that tin of sweets. And I opened it and there was a mouldy cake in there. They'd baked me a cake and I hadn't even opened the tin. But just random acts of kindness.
Yeah.
They were the sort of things that touched me as well.
Massively.
And also when people send like a sympathy card, some people went the extra mile and wrote in a little memory that they used to think about Matthew. And just little touches like that mean so much.
Huge. Because this is the thing as well with grief, sometimes you feel like it almost becomes a taboo subject to talk about that person. But I think for me, some of the best funerals, if that's even the right word.
Well, you can say that because my son's funeral was amazing.
Yeah.
It was such a celebration.
Okay.
Everybody that knew and loved him was in the same room, and it was lovely. So yes, you can have a good funeral.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's that, I remember a friend's brother, and I just remember him, he just had this love for life.
Yeah.
And his funeral was all about that, and we just talked about all the random stuff he did and just laughed and joked and just celebrated it.
Yeah.
And I think so. Sometimes I think people tread around that. It's like, well, can I mention that? Can I mention that? Can I mention that? And people do want to remember, though. It's very healing. I think certainly. I know for my mum, because I don't really talk a lot about Abby really unless somebody brings it up.
Yeah.
But I know for my mum, she'll talk about the story. She wants to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
She wants to keep that memory alive. That part of her that she's lost, she wants to keep it alive. So,
absolutely.
Why deny people that?
And I think when you've had a difficult relationship with a loved one and then they die, you have all of those mixed emotions that
Sure.
you go through. But if you can find one or three, maybe 1, 2, 3 really good memories of where you were with that person, where you were having a laugh or smiling, if you can just hang on to 3 of those memories and hold that in your heart, they would want you to think of them in that way, wouldn't they?
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah. But how would you describe grief to someone who has never had a significant loss?
Wow. It's like nothing you've ever experienced before.
Yeah.
There's no words. There's no words that can prepare you for it, because you just don't know how it will be.
No.
You know, the way it was for me, I can describe how it was for me. I just literally felt like I was existing on a different planet. There was this sense of calm, and then there would be, and you never knew when it was coming, there'd be these moments were just completely overcome with emotion.
Yeah.
And you just didn't know when they were going to hit. Could just be walking down the street, and the next thing you know, you're bursting into tears. Uncontrollable. But you just got to go with it.
Yeah.
Accept it. Be with it. Don't fight it. Roll with it.
Yeah.
However it shows up for you.
Yeah. Just feel it, like you say, experience it. Allow yourself to process whatever is there. Don't push it down. Don't suppress it. Don't think I'll deal with this another day. You just need to be in it.
I think, I would say to anyone out there, cancel your schedule. Don't go to work. Don't just go and sit in the pub and drink. You just be there with it.
Yeah, yeah.
It needs to have an outlet.
Absolutely.
It's that stuff, if you sit it down, especially if you've got other emotions like that, with the guilt, whatever, you just let that curdle inside you. Yeah, that's going to cause problems. It'll come out sooner or rather than it'll come out eventually.
Absolutely, because when we push these unprocessed emotions down, they go into the body, they go into our organs and our tissues and our bones. And there is this theory that eventually it will turn into an ache or a pain or an illness or a disease. You know, we need to experience grief. It is part of life. And it is horrible.
Yeah.
But what words of wisdom could you share to maybe help someone loosen their grief in some way?
Again, I think we'll just reflect a little bit on what we said a few minutes back.
Yeah.
About take that time to be gentle with yourself, but also celebrate the life of the person who's passed.
Yeah.
Find those moments of laughter, of kindness, of stupidity, silliness, shared moments when you've travelled, when you were growing up, played a game. Just take the time to really embrace that and keep those memories alive.
Absolutely.
If the tears come, let them come. Don't apologise for it either. I see that all the time. I'm sorry. What are you sorry for? You're in pain. Don't be sorry for that.
Yeah.
I don't need to apologise for it. Just embrace it. And over time, things will ease. Things will become lighter. Just go with it.
Yeah. Good advice. It won't always be like this.
No.
It will change. So where are you in your grief journey now, Ash?
That's a good question. I've come to terms with a lot of it. I think for me, like I mentioned earlier on, I many years back, I started writing a book on my mental health journey. Because again, I just felt that as a man, I needed to be sharing this story because not enough men have been sharing this story. But there were two particular chapters that were going to deal with Abby, and I've not been able to write them. But when you approached me to come on here, all of a sudden my book got dusted off and I've started writing it again. And I've shared it with my mum.
Yeah.
because I was worried a little bit about me talking truthfully, what impact that would have on her, on the other members of the family. So now I feel that can come out now, truthfully. In terms of how I feel and in the grief, I think there's still that element of guilt, but I feel there's a lot more peace there regarding it.
Yeah.
Do I go and see Abby's grave? No, I think I've been to it twice.
Yeah.
For me, that doesn't do anything for me. But I have, I don't know what this. Abby comes every now and again.
Okay.
You get the smell of cigarette smoke every now and again. So I've started talking to her. So even in death, there is a way to gain some sort of peace.
Yeah.
With the relationship. So
yeah,
that's
it's an ongoing journey, isn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like Mum, for example, she just talks about it as like a tsunami.
Yeah.
She'll be fine 1 minute and then she just crashes.
Absolutely, yeah.
I didn't have those extremes
at
all when it came to it, for sure. But yeah, there are times I catch it and I think I see a picture at home or that, and it does make me feel sad.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I can't change that now. So just
And people probably look at you. You're a confidence coach, and you've got your life sorted. But underneath, we're all battling something, aren't we?
Yeah.
And obviously, what you're going through is and have been through is enormous. And is an ongoing journey. But a lot of people on the outside will see Ash, confidence coach. So the fact that you're talking about this, I'm so grateful that you're my guest today, Ash, because I really believe this is going to touch a lot of people out there, particularly men. And it's going to be so helpful. So do you believe that grief has given you any gifts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a whole host more of understanding.
Yeah.
Because I realised certainly, like when Abby was here, and like you mentioned earlier on, I think when you've got that personal attachment with family, and maybe you don't have the emotional intelligence or the maturity at the time, it's very easy to take things personally instead of actually, what's actually going on for her, what's actually driving that behaviour. So being able, I think it opened a path of discovery for me regarding that. And certainly with the certain type of people I've been a lot of the people I've worked with that have got challenging behaviours, learning challenges, emotional challenges. It's like, what's driving this? What's powering this? What is behind that behaviour? So it did, for sure. It opened me up a lot more to what people do, their behaviour, and also a greater level of understanding. Yeah. So that without a shadow of a doubt, that's been massive gifts. Yeah.
Oh, that's good to hear that you can see that and acknowledge that, because a lot of people find that quite a difficult question. How can the death of a loved one give me any gifts? But there is a gift in everything, isn't there?
Absolutely. I think, because grief ultimately is the death is like one of the biggest examples of life in terms of chaos. It creates chaos.
Yeah.
It totally throws you off your equilibrium. But within that, when you are in chaos, that is one of the best opportunities to learn, because you are not fixed in your ways, in your mindset.
Yeah.
So you're open to see other things. And that was without a shadow of a doubt what I noticed.
Yeah. So what would you like people to learn from your experience?
Well, in terms of the living and the people that are still here, don't wait for tomorrow. Ain't guaranteed.
Yeah.
I'm living proof of that in the relationship I had with Abby. I said, right, we'll do it. We'll do it next week. We'll do it next month. We'll do it next month.
Yeah.
Never got to do it. So if you have a relative, a friend that you're estranged from any reason, you feel any sort of compulsion to change up that relationship, do it today.
Yeah.
Not next week, not next year. Do it today.
Yeah. Good advice. So you say Abby visits you, you smell
Yeah.
cigarettes. So do you believe our loved ones can give us signs? And what are your thoughts about the afterlife?
I always, I'm not a religious person at all, but I've always been interested in the whole spirituality side of things. So yeah, I think when I was in Thailand, they do reincarnation, the afterlife, karma, nirvana.
Yeah.
It is a big part of those Eastern Asian religions or beliefs, because a lot of them, they don't class themselves as religions. So that really, I loved exploring that. And I believe that, I don't know if there's such a thing as heaven and hell as that, but I think just the nature of who we are and what makes us, we're energy, we're atoms.
Yeah.
I don't believe that in its current form it dies, for sure. But I believe we do go back to the earth and do reformulate in some way, shape or form. So I do believe that something happens.
Yeah.
And in answer to that, when I get visits, I can't explain that. I don't know if that's a mind thing, whether it actually is that, whether it's association, but it is strong.
Yeah.
And you cannot deny it. You know, my parents, they talked about it. They said they'd smell her every now and again.
Yeah.
And nobody smokes. And that smell is smoke. As someone who smoked and someone who smelt smokers,
Yeah.
it's a very distinct smell.
And when it happens, does it give you comfort?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like now I'll just speak to her because I've got a friend, a former partner actually, who has a gift.
Yeah.
And she got visited by Abby a few times and sent a message. It was like, don't forget about me.
Oh.
I'm here. So I know, yeah, that sort of thing. I've seen ghosts.
Yeah.
Or I believe I have.
Yeah.
Like, it's doing their thing.
Yeah.
I feel scared by it. I feel comforted by it.
I'm on the same page as you when it comes to sort of the afterlife. Haven't got the answers, but I do believe there's something.
Sure.
You know, we're energy at the end of the day, and
Absolutely.
energy has to exist in some shape or form. So, you know, when our physical body dies, where does that energy go? So, yeah, so if you could give Abby a message, Ash, what would you like to say?
I think the first word was sorry, but she already knows that.
Yes.
I think if she was here, like right now, I'd probably just make her laugh and I'd just say something funny and be silly. Because that was the way we connected,
Yeah.
through the silliness.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever had a life-defining conversation or anything profound, so I think that goes straight over her head. She'd go, what are you talking about that nonsense for? So, yeah, I'd probably just say something funny, like,
Yeah.
yeah, just say something to try and make her laugh.
Oh, well, Ash, I'm so grateful that you have been, well, first of all, my first male guest. You've been an amazing guest, and I'm so grateful. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been awesome.
Very welcome. Thank you. When I approached Ash to be a guest on my podcast, I'd no idea he'd had an estranged relationship with his sister Abby. Today, he spoke bravely and openly about this, and it will help others who have experienced a similar situation. He describes that he lost Abby twice. She died twice, the first time when they became estranged. When it comes to grieving the loss of an estranged sibling or loved one, the pain can be uniquely complex. It's not only the grief over the physical departure, but also the mourning of a relationship that never had a chance to fully mend. The emotions may range from deep sadness and regret to confusion and anger. You can find yourself questioning what could have been different. What could I have done to bridge the gap between us? In many ways, this type of loss is accompanied by waves of guilt and unresolved feelings that can take years, even decades to process. While society often romanticizes our family bonds, it's important to acknowledge that sometimes relationships break down due to various circumstances. Grieving an estranged sibling or loved one involves embracing the complexity of these emotions and finding solace in cherishing the memories you have instead of dwelling on what could have been. An exercise to practice is to think of a happy memory you have of the two of you together. It may only be a brief happy memory, but capture it and focus your attention on this. Better still, find 2 or 3 good memories to keep in your heart. Choose your favourite memories and hold these in your heart when you think about your estranged loved one. It's never too late to repair what's been broken. The memories they leave behind are the gifts for you to keep. Thank you for listening to this episode of A Gift for Grief. Please feel free to share it with your friends and family, and let's encourage others to become more grief literate. If you're struggling with your grief or worried about your mental health, please do speak to your doctor. If you would like to join me on my social media groups, check out the show notes for all the links, and I look forward to connecting with you next time. The music on this podcast was written and recorded by Matthew Bates and can be found on his 2 albums, Fight Back and Kaleidoscope.